First of all, hi everyone. This is May. I am the co-founder and chief product officer of TechDev Academy. I would like to introduce to TechDev Academy just quickly. We are a Silicon Valley-based startup, and our goal is to provide tech training to your kids in a variety of topics such as entrepreneurship, robotics, game development, and programming, including Scratch, Unity, Roblox, Python, C++, Java, JavaScript, and many others. Especially after COVID-19, we organized over 50 free workshops, lectures, and webinars to serve the community during these difficult times. We are so proud and happy to say that thanks to those free workshops and webinars, we have reached over 7,000 students and parents. And we will continue to do so. In TechDev Academy, we have also many virtual bootcamps available for game development and programming, such as I said before, Roblox, Minecraft World Designer, C# for coding games, and several others. Our camps is targeting to improve their confidence, creativity, and team working skills. We keep our class size limited to 5 students. We bring coding experience to your kids while having fun. We also provide mentorship and additional support during and after the camps via Google Classroom. Also, I want to share such an exciting news with you today. We have opened the waiting list applications for our comprehensive entrepreneurship and mentorship programs that designed to build entrepreneurship skills with hands-on projects and work with real-world research experience with top-ranking mentors. As a token of appreciation, we are providing a $150 discount for the webinar participants only. I will share the details on the chat. That's all I want to share today. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, May. Hello, everybody. I would like to say welcome to everybody. So this is Ismail. I am one of the co-founders of the company, and I am the Chief Education Officer. Today it's our fourth of our webinar series, Parenting Talk series. So I would like to introduce our CEO, Murat. If you would like to briefly introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Murat. It's nice to meet you. I'm the co-founder and CEO. And we are hoping to, as May said, we are doing non-traditional education systems to help the students to improve themselves in technology, and hope that Greg's event will help us, and it will be recorded and we get really good traction in YouTube as well. People will watch that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And today our guest speaker is Dr. Greg Mcverry. So Greg, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Greg Mcverry. I am a associate professor at Southern Connecticut State University, where I'm also the fellow for online learning, a longtime contributor to Mozilla, picked as one of the 50 people in the world best fighting for internet health. I did a lot of leadership development curriculum, web literacy curriculum for Mozilla. I'm currently working on multiple projects around the world. I run a very similar camp to TechDev Academy in New Haven, but on a very small scale as part of the indie web movement, which is, I believe that the best way to build a better future is to teach children to own their own digital cyber infrastructure. You can't really know how truth is shaped online till you shape your own. So the best thing to do, whether it's coding or crochet, is just you get a passion, get a blog. Coding can be taught and copy pasted. It's the creativity of and computational thinking that we need to embed in our children. So I work in teacher preparation around those efforts. Currently have a few grants to do remote field placements where I put mentors in with students around the country. That's it. So that's a little bit brief of me, I guess.
Cool, you are doing a lot of things over there. So we can start our talk. And I would like to remind our audience. Go ahead. So I would like to just remind our audience that they can ask their questions via the chat session. So we can ask their questions to Dr. Mcverry. So Greg, if you'd like to start.
Sure will. So welcome everybody. I'm here today to talk to you a couple things. Really, it's about as parents, how do we support our remote learners, whether that's in their K-12 schooling, whether it's our hybrid schooling, or whether it's with TechDev Academy. But really what I'm teaching about is just principles of good open pedagogy and learning, because this will work whether you're in a face-to-face classroom, whether you're on the job site, or whether you're in TechDev Academy. It's really about 5 tips that I'm going to share with you today that can truly help transform how you support remote learning as a parent. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick. And where do I have it open? There we go. Is everybody looking at the presentation? All right, so 5 strategies to win at remote learning. And here's the thing, I rarely ever use slide decks. In actually almost 2 years now of teaching, I've not done a slide deck. So this is really more of a framing than I'm not gonna PowerPoint you to death. PowerPoint starts to stink at the first bullet point. That's when it dies. How do we do this? We're parents, we got our kids, we have jobs, we have to be on remote. We got one kid in one room, one kid in another room. How are we gonna do this all? Well, first, just breathe and know that getting to acceptable is a win, right? You don't have to, you can't be behind grade level because grade levels are made up. You can't, there is no biological Bible that says a 7th grader must know this. We do have our standards, but those standards are made by people. You know, they're not made by science, they're not made by nature. So you can't, as long as your child is moving forward, you are winning. And that's during this time of crisis, parents need to know that. Like, getting by is a win. But I want to share 5 strategies to that you can use as a parent. And the first one is really learning logs. You need to learn how to learn online. And that's the best way that you can support your students, is those conversations around the breakfast table or the dinner table. That can be a learning log. Ask them not what did they do, but specifically, what strategies did you use to remember? How did you problem solve? Like, don't just say, how was your day? How was camp? Specifically elicit information from your students. And that's one way you can do a learning logs. But again, I recommend, like, if I was TechDev Academy, I would give every camper a blog, because A, they're telling you, they're sharing your story. So it's, user-generated content is the best kind of marketing. And mainly because it's also the best kind of learning. You just set them to set a goal every day, and then they reflect on it. They can, I use what John Locke called a philosophy of the commonplace book. And if you just Google commonplace book, you'll see lots of information about it. But it's this idea that, paper used to be so expensive that you wouldn't want to write in the margins of books. So people would have one journal, like mine's kind of right here. And it's just their, and they just keep writing it. My journal is really my blog. You can find me on, I do my quick thinking on quickthoughts.jgregory.com. Then I curate and formulate that into a wiki at longthoughts.jgregory.com. And I'm stuck in the middle of my long thoughts and my quick thoughts at jgregory.com. And that's where I publish my more pieces where they're totally finalized. So I have a workflow that supports the way that I learn. What else can you do in a weekly learning log that isn't blogging? Well, have a weekly planning meeting or guide. Look at this on my calendar every day: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I set my goals. You should do something similar with your students, right? You need to be thinking about daily learning goals. Don't forget, for learning logs, paper, pencils, these are technology. They're really, really good technology. Like, that's why they don't get replaced. Like, everybody's always trying to come up with a better pencil. What, Apple Pencil's what, $300? This one still does more. Shh, don't tell Apple. This is still a better pencil, right? Whiteboards. right? Awesome tool for any kind of remote classroom or camp, because students can do quick check-ins. You can do plus, minus, and plus deltas really fast, or quick problem solving. When you're learning, if you're thinking about learning about nested arrays and thinking about how you're going to nest those arrays, you can quickly do a whiteboard exercise. So it's a great way to do those kinds of learning goals. And then chunk projects. As a parent, if you know that your student, either through TechDev Academy, like, hey, we want you to have a business plan. I think writing business plans is silly, but you know what? It's a good skill to learn. But you need to get revenue. That's what you do. You get a product that people want, and if you can sell it for $1, you can sell it for $2. Revenue matters more than plans. But that's just me. But set those goals and chunk out those big projects. So if they're learning JavaScript, and the goal is to create some kind of form that can then publish a 5-word memoir at the end, work with your students to set that up. Okay, when do you want to have your storyboards done? All right, when do you want to learn how JavaScript variables work? All right, when do you want to learn how you're going to store that data? Are you going to store that data? Are you going to use a flat file, or do you need to learn how to use a database? So this works with your students. This is the kind of learning that we need to start teaching, because it's not just about learning code because it's cool. It's about learning the work style of the remote workforce. This is for most of us, and including the panelists, we've just lived webby lives. So we've just organized and built these skills and practices and dispositions over time. So you can then, it's only about reflecting on progress. And that's really what you want to do with a learning log. No matter how you choose to do it, whether that's a dinner time conversation, a blog, a journal, however you're having your students document their learning, you need to have, there is no learning without reflection and without feedback. And those two things bring me to the next point. And I know we've heard growth mindset to the point where it's almost like a cliche meme and vapid, but it works. If you design your feedback in ways where it's like it's outcome based and driven the students to growth, you get better learning. And that's what the learning logs do. They need a spot to learn. Create a company. This is easier than said to done and has a lot of privilege built in. But your students need one spot that they're going to learn every day. And if that's TechDev Academy's in the dining room in 1 second, or in, if you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, that's they make a spot, even if it's just hanging up like one piece of paper or like one picture. If you live in a single family home, like this summer, I had students that were living in a hotel room with 4 or 5 of his parents and 3 brothers and sisters, and they were in a hotel. We still had that student make a spot, even though it had to be everybody else's spot. But when it was his learning time, he got to customize it. That meant putting up something, you have to they need to own their spot for learning and remote learning. Also remember, it doesn't have to always be online. It's okay to have an online session and then shut down, do an offline activity, and then hop back on with everybody, right? So definitely create a space for your students. They need to have break room toys. Find a little something that they can mess around with, whether it's a cushy ball or something, but something that they can kind of have around them. Have the supplies ready for them. Graph paper is an engineer and developer's best friend. Have it handy and ready. I'm drawing a blank, but but in terms of interactions and user experience icons, you can buy templates to fill those in. I'm totally blanking on the word that is, and I will come up with it in a second and just shout it out randomly. But there's little icon tools that you can buy them that students can then use and trace to draw out their storyboards on graph paper. Because that's all it is. You're just pre-planning. You're just planning out an essay, or you're planning out an app, or you're planning out a website. It's still just pre-writing. And think about noise. And every child is different with noise. Some may be neurodiverse and need specifically no silence, or need a white noise to back out any distractions. Others might need music to work with. Each child's individual. So figure out how you're going to craft the cubby to help your remote learner. You got to take control of the time. This is hard for students to learn. What's the first rule? You cannot multitask. All you're doing is two things bad. You don't multitask, you just get distracted. So the key is to own your time. And so now that you know that multitasking is a myth, think about ways to get around it. And you could do things like just make a to-do list, just every day. Like I wake up, you can't really see it, but there's a bulleted list on a piece of scrap paper. That's just, and I get to check it off. When I'm super busy, I might formalize it and do the Pomodoro method. I don't know if people are familiar with it, but Pomodoro is named for the tomato timer from a gentleman I think was in who invented it, was either in Italy or just had a timer that was shaped like a Pomodoro tomato. And it's based on this idea that you work in, like, I can't remember if it's, you can set your own time limits based on the age level of your students, but say you might work for 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break, 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break, 20 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And then on the fourth one, you can take a 10-minute break, a longer break. And it's however you want to chunk your time. But the goal is then you estimate how many tomatoes a task will do, and you're only allowed to do that task at a time. And you know what, though that short bit of time, that's enough to keep you off social media. That is your biggest loss of control of time, is the addictive nature of social media. Do this with your students. Before you work on it, take control of your time, let them just go learn. And then afterwards, scroll through their web history with them. Now, if your kids are as smart as mine, they probably have one private browser going and one regular browser going. But have those conversations about how distracting social media can be during work, and really, finally, then build in screen breaks. Taking a break from your computer to scroll through your phone for 5 minutes is not a screen break. I mean, like, legit, you don't have to be sitting in your remote classrooms. Your kids can be walking around. You can be walking around. But most importantly, take a break away from the screen in remote learning. Where do I do my best coding and writing? When I'm walking my dog. Legit, like, I don't have anything with me, although, no, actually, sometimes because I do that, I can't find it, because I cleaned up my office before this talk. Oh, here it is. But yeah, I always roll with one of these in my pocket, because I'm walking, I'm coding. That's where that's where I do my computational thinking, not at my desk. Because you know what happens to your desk? Code breaks. And that's you miss a div. Like, literally, I've lost hours of my life looking for missing closing divs. So you need to just take a break and walk away. And that's cool. Most importantly, as parents, we need to support our students and our learners through active learning. And what do I mean by that? That's just, same thing I said before, reflecting, goal setting, being conscious of your goals, basically knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. Because here's the thing, I have to hire people for my company. I own a company called ReviewTalentFeedback.com. We do trainings and teacher evaluations for the government, for schools, and for private organizations. And we have to focus in on that kind of active learning. Feedback drives everything. So when I'm thinking about active learning, what do I mean? Oops, sorry. Again, it's just something like a whiteboard and scrap. That's just good enough to be an active learner. But it's also about just reading. Oftentimes, and you might see this, the teachers might assign read chapter 4. You know what that means to a child? Nothing. What are they reading chapter 4 for? I guess I should have picked a different number than 4, but homonyms, homophones, homographs, have fun. The idea that they need to have purposeful reading. So you as a parent, you may not even know the topic, but you can help them be active readers. How? Text structure, text structure, text structure. Even if it's the most complicated document on JavaScript. you can probably scan the document for the text structure. Because here's the problem. A lot of documentation is written by engineers, and documentation is not tutorials. And there's certain things that engineers shouldn't do, and that's writing tutorials sometimes. And so some of those can be very dense documents. But you as a parent may not understand the content, but you can help your students be active learners by skimming the text, identifying the headers and the headings, and designing an outline before they read to help them fill out. So use that text structure. Have purposeful reading. Don't just say read chapter 4. Read chapter 4, and I want you to try to find the key 3 ideas of something. Set a goal for those kinds of ideas. And finally, for active learning, you have to attend to precision. Because remember when I was talking about owning a company, I don't want to hire the person who can know it all, because they're lying. Nobody knows it all. I want to hire the person who knows what they don't know and can go out and learn it with minimal intervention by me. That's what I mean by being a self-programmable learner, which isn't my term. It's Castells and Cardoza, if you have read in the Network Society. They come up with this idea that the future belongs to those who can be self-programmable learners. And that's what active learning is. Knowing what you don't know, knowing how to go out and learn it, and knowing when it's learned, and that's where support and activities like through TechDev Academy are great, because the final step is passion. I said it from the get-go. Code is copy-pasted. What you cannot copy-paste is a passion and purpose to why you are doing and being. So
great. One of our audience is asking, there are too many distractions. So how can we handle it?
Too many what? Hold on, let me.
There are too many distractions, she says. How can we handle them?
Hold on 1 second. I'm actually going to try to pull. Whenever I'm sharing my screen, I always lose chat. Oh, there it is. Q&A. Okay. I 100% agree. I don't want my students to be on. There are too many distractions. How do you handle it? Well, there's your home distractions. The computer distractions you can handle. There are plugins that will allow you to turn off specific websites. You can block. You can also learn how to block specific things by timers. A lot of the cable companies now have like apps that are connected to your router. Even though the routers that you run from your cable companies are garbage, you should go buy your own instead of paying $12 a month. But that's a different talk. But I agree with what May is saying, that 6 to 8 hours is too much. That's why I started with, you can be offline, like you need to get away from the screen. And one thing that I'm fighting with districts is I do not believe in that you must show your face thing. Because I know for a fact, I teach online full time. I have 3 students at home. We cannot all be online at the same time on video chat. It will break. Like my router, done. So also, like middle school students, like they're dealing with body images. They don't want to be recorded in TikTok. Or as a parent, you might have to get ready for work. And you know what? The computer room is also your laundry room, and you don't want to be on camera getting dressed. So I do fight against that idea. So my solution for that 6 to 8 hours of time is, that's why I want those smaller pods where I'm trying to team them up with my mentors in teacher preparation, May, to have them kind of work in smaller groups. But then I'm also working with schools to come up with, adding things like low tech Thursdays, or, you meet for an hour and then the kids go off and do something and they get online. Or it can be like just switching up the screen. Yeah, Zooming for 8 hours, that can be strenuous. But maybe you talk for 15 minutes in a mini lesson, and then there's 25 minutes where kids are hacking together in a Google Doc, and then you get back together for a 5-minute share. So what we have to do is take what the good pedagogy, like what is good pedagogy in face-to-face is good pedagogy in remote. And I would never want anybody sitting in a classroom straight for 6 to 8 hours. So the idea that we are forcing our students to do that online right now, mainly to serve adults, not to serve learning. It's about weird union rules and what the schools must report for attendance. It rarely has to do with what's good for the students. So honestly, what I would, if my kids come home remote, they're actually back to school full time. Connecticut has a positivity rate of just hit 2, but we're back finally under. It got scary. We got over 2%. So my kids are back, but I'm literally just going to unenroll them. Like if we go full remote, I'm just going to unenroll them. I can do that in Connecticut though, because like we just have stronger parental, like you just have to know the laws of your state and what are the consequences for not enrolling your kids. Do I think learning is going to continue? I think learning is going to be completely different. I am worried about this being a privileged boundary though. I think a lot of parents learned like how much time gets wasted in school when the learning only took maybe 2 hours to do, 2.5 hours to do. Well, then what's going on the other 4 hours? You know, like so much of school is about daycare, not about learning. We have to come to terms with that. And I think that's what we're thinking about, Adam, is I think a lot of people are realizing the major purpose of school had more to do with warehousing our children so we could all be good capitalists and work all the time. I mean, it's only been under 100 years that we have taken kids away from families all day long. Like that's in all of Homo history. And I'm not just talking about the sapiens. I'm talking about all the extinct too. We've always taught our kids at home and matched them up with kind of an apprenticeship model. This daycare model of school is only about 150 years old. So I think the daycare model of school will change. I don't know if it'll be fully online, Adam, but what my hope is that schools will take advantage of this kind of learning. But I think what the world has changed, and I don't think the world is going to be fully face-to-face. It's going to be a mix of remote. So schools are going to adapt because it is our job to get students to be college and career ready. And I also think maybe that's the big change. Like, why is college and career ready the goal? Why not civic and community ready? Because I feel like if you were driven by this purpose of serving your community, serving your world, serving yourself, you probably might get college and career ready because you can't do that stuff without that. And I also write a way too big student loan check every month. And I'm eventually being like, maybe this college thing ain't totally worth it for my kids. So there's, there's all of that going there. So I hope that kind of answers your question. I do think it's going to change a lot. I do worry it's going to be very privilege based. In the United States, oftentimes it's not just having the computers and the access, but how they are used with more students of color and marginalized communities. They're often used as testing machines and just drilling on IXL and Khan Academy over and over and over versus their creativity and the passion projects that you might find in some of our wider and wealthier districts. I agree, Steve, and I'm done. I'm done with the excuses. The web's been out for 30 years. If you do not know how to use it as a teacher, you are illiterate, and you chose to stay illiterate for the last 30 years. It's problematic. And I've been talking about this for 10, 15 years. I actually put in a grant a few years ago saying that we should get ready. We should do remote student teaching because what if there's a global pandemic? I didn't get the award, but I wish I could just do a Just Saying award right now because I'm just we have been talking about this for a while. And I think, Steve, that's where I, as teacher prep, I'm really trying to connect those students. But here's the thing. It might be a self-fixing problem and it's too late now, and that's a shame. But because all of the students who are in my preparation programs now are in full online, all the time classrooms, they're getting a lot more experience overnight in terms of how you do remote pedagogy. And I just spent all day today with 35 teachers in New Haven. And what we're working on is what good remote learning and teaching activities, how we're going to use breakout rooms. And they're getting paired with mentors from my school. So I think we have to work together with our K-12 schools, our public education schools, and with organizations like TechDev Academy. Why can't students take one of these classes and earn dual credit at high school or even dual credit for college? I think we have to start formulating private and public partnerships. My goal is to make the city the campus or the state the campus if it's more of a rural place. But I want to break the camp. I think that's what I want Adam, when we talk about continuing fully online, it's not that so much about online or offline. I don't live that dichotomy. Online and all, it's just me. It's just there's just life. There isn't a physical, a digital, and a meat space. It's just space for me. So what I'm hoping is that we're able to expand that space and knock down barriers of access. You can dream big. And that's where those passion projects like TechDev Academy really work, is because this is where it starts. You start with a passion. I don't care what it is. And then you just have to tell your story. And then, because you can't, like, what we're doing is we're building in digital cyber infrastructure for each individual student. Like, if they're running and they're hosting their own domain, and it's a domain of one's own project, and they could be building up, they could have their own cloud system, and they could, like, so we're relying on all these cool tools. But in the same sense, like, why not teach kids to SSH into their site and install a wiki and own their information that way. I also like flat file systems, and a shout out to, it's okay to still learn PHP. It's kind of fun. It's super easy. You don't have to compile everything every time. It just works. All right. And there's actually a ton of work because nobody knows PHP, and all these companies have these old WooCommerce WordPress sites that are breaking, and they want to update them to some like newfangled, overly complicated, nasty front end thing. You can see I'm a little biased to flat files and HTML. But there's a lot of work in like updating those old systems, and you have to know the new and the old. So shout out to learning those ideas. But so you have to tell your story. Then you go out and you learn something. Just that's how we can get them to, I saw there was another question, scroll down. That's how you learn to learn online. Like right now, what am I doing? I'm doing the same thing. I'm documenting how I'm trying to learn how to hand carve a chess set. And I put up like all my notes, all my pictures, and I'm showing my students as we build our portfolio sites on our learning projects. Like I do that too. And then I'm spending my other, like how I learn, and I hurt their ears because I'm like, you know what? I should learn to play a ukulele. So I just record myself and I reflect on how, so that kind of learning, that helps their computational thinking. That helps their long-term planning. Are not doing that. But so that's how you have, and then after you learn something, go out and teach something. And then finally do something. Make yourself or the world a better place. And if you fall, like, that's a curriculum that I use from preschool to graduate school. Tell your story, learn something, teach something, do something. And there's something special about giving students a place to be online as themselves. For example, let me just show you. I'm gonna, I think I'm still sharing my screen. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been sharing my screen that whole time. But let me move this over. I will drop this link in our chat. This is the tech camp I started this summer. Let me find Zoom again, I lost it. All right, and oops, wrong link, sorry. That's me trying to get everybody to quit Facebook. That's a whole separate project, not for this talk. I did not mean to bring in politics to this, I apologize. Oh, why does it keep doing that? It's like not letting me copy the link. I'll just type it. I'm that tired of that. Yeah, ignore my political rants against Facebook. That was not the topic of this talk. Although it kind of is in the sense that I would rather have everybody on their own websites than on Facebook. So this is like our RSS feed from our camp. And we're, we don't do, like, when we're learning HTML, we're doing storytelling. We're not learning HTML. Like the kids had to make a scary movie poster about technology. And then the kids, and I built this, we have this planet, and they, we talk about their music and their basketball. And so we have this whole feed going on, and we could teach our students to be their own social network. So that's kind of where I want you to support parents is get your kids a domain. It's $20-$30, right? I use Reclaim Hosting. They're awesome. You can use any of them, DreamHost, Micro.blog, if you want to just pay $5 a month and have it work. That's I do cybersecurity work for the US government. Well, not really for the US government, I'm volunteer, that's a whole other thing. I work on this project where we're trying to come up with a set of standards for all federal contractors, that they have some cybersecurity standards, and we have to make these tests and objectives. So I'm working on that project as well. And I host that blog on micro.blog, and it's $5 a month. Or if you want your whole family, $20, and then you can give every one of your kids like your own group. You get to some like little private social like family network. It's amazing. Yeah, I would. So Adam, I will say that. So when you're handling your classroom management as an issues, there's two things there. A, the first sign of bad classroom management is usually bad pedagogy. And so that is on you and not the parents. So I think in terms of how do you handle that kind of those projects is first try to examine, like there are certain words that I don't use. I don't say kids lazy. I don't, there's certain things that I know is caused more by poor teaching than by the specific dispositions of the child. So it is, but it's also hard for your kid too, because they're at home and I can't teach my own kids. I have a PhD in educational psychology. I teach people all over their own worlds. When I'm working with my own kids, doing the remote stuff, it doesn't always go well. So sometimes the best thing to do is to walk away and let it be on the teachers. It's the teacher's job to do classroom management. It is not yours. So if you're
Greg, so if we go back to May's question, like 6 to 8 hours every day, straight e-learning. So next day it's hard to motivate the kid, to sit before the computer. So how could you motivate them? Is there a magic way?
Again, the caveat that said, if that was happening to my child, I would unenroll them from that school, and I would just homeschooling and doing nothing is less damaging than 6 to 8 hours straight of e-learning in front of the screen. That's just, but my child is also in 7th grade, and really you're 13, it's a lost year anyways. I think the world would be better off if we just took all the 7th grade boys and just locked them away for a year, and we let them out in 8th grade. We're not allowed to do that though. So the strategies that I think I would recommend is, again, it's each one your child's. The key is token economies lose their power super fast. And the other thing is you don't want to take away, you want to reward. So if you are going to use a token economy with that caveat that those extrinsic rewards, the effect goes down fast. But if you're going to do that, earn up to, never take away. So it's not, if you don't sit there, you don't get Xbox. It's, hey, for every 45 minutes that you have uninterrupted learning time, you earn 5 minutes of Xbox time. And how you set those parameters are based on the age of the child and the unique relationship that you have with your child. There is something more than work, there's something that motivates them more than school. And then hopefully try to finding in those ways, those passions that they're interested in. But see, school was this boring before. We just didn't know because the kids were just locked away at a desk for 6 to 8 hours. But they got to hang with their friends. I was trying to convince my boys to stay home. You guys sure you want to go back to school? I'm totally, I will just pull you out and you don't have to ever go again. But they really want that interaction. So one thing I think you should also do is, either as a parent, or hope the school does it, is I want them to set up hallway rooms where kids, and I want them to have lunch rooms where kids can just sit and go to lunch and talk and meet with their friends. And and the really young kids, have you ever seen those morning meetings? They're crazy. The kids all the time. Well, as a teacher, why not just open up that chat 30 minutes before the morning meeting and let them shake the sillies out then? And because they miss people. Yesterday I went to somewhere and I saw strangers. I was picking up Chinese food and I drove south. I haven't been that far south in talking 10 miles. But I went into a restaurant for the first time since March. Everybody's masked. There's only 4 tables, but it was just weird to see people in a public place. And I think our kids desperately miss that kind of interaction with people. So they want to have that kind of schooling going. How do you keep the students' passion? Well, yeah, what makes them passionate about? Like keeping them passionate about in something that they're not passionate about is hard. And that Gazelle, that is tough. And I don't have a magic answer for that. And it really is an individual conversation with individual students. Let me stop my screen share. And it's really those individual conversations with that. We've observed that different schools. No, well, Adam, I think, yeah, no, it was there before. We always knew that rich people had more stuff than poor people. And unfortunately, in the United States, we have concentrated our poverty and our and race through the policies of the last 400 years. So it's like, is it supposed to be better online? Just giving the equipment's not enough to make online learning better. We still have to work with those educators and those parents. So that's like with the Tech for Teens camp I did. Everybody gets a free computer, but they have to do the training first. It's a totally free camp. I have to beg, cheat, and steal to raise money. If any of you guys have if you're in a place where you can donate, literally 100% goes to free computers and training parents in New Haven on how to use those computers. Like I set up a preschool that is completely remote. Gosh, I'm doing too much right now. But I set up a preschool that's completely remote. And what my students are doing is they're not actually teaching the preschool because it's all tablet based. They're just meeting with the parents and teaching them how to use tablets. And little things like Remind and it's like setting up like vocabulary answers really quick. Like you could set up like teaching tips every day. And then as parents, set up your own little, I don't want to say pods because that word's so like people are paying for pods, but I meant like, who are the kids, Gazelle, that your friend wants to learn with? You know what brings passion to school? Friendship. So if you can then, set up an outside chat with those kids. And if you're not allowed to do that in school, you can do it as parents. Just don't use the school property and let the kids know they are probably, overseen by the school's acceptable use policy. But set up back channels with their friends. Passion is really what they want. I would hope that when the first thing you do is when I did my camp is we basically ask kids like, what is your passion? What are your hobbies? And then we try to match the mentors, not by like technology skills, but by passions. Like, oh, you like basketball? This person likes basketball. And so we did a lot of matching of things there. Yeah, Adam, I think a lot of people, that's okay, is be proactive and be willing to, it's okay to ask your school to switch parents if you know that your child's not getting the best education. I can't promise you that they will. But it's okay to ask and advocate for your parents. But I don't want to be school bashing, but because I know my school actually did a really, really good job with remote learning last year because they had low tech Tuesdays and Thursdays. And they did a lot of like the art was like a lot of recycled art projects because you didn't know what kids had. And my son made like a bunch of like maker videos. Let me see it. Go check his blog and I'll throw that into the chat real fast. Dog Zone. Oh, but my son's ready to kill me. I have not fixed his website. I might have accidentally overwrote it when I was checking out GitHub Actions and I was playing with the FTP action and forgot to remove the delete command. So I need to go back through archive.org and find a lot of his old pictures and posts. But like, where is it? Home Run Derby's my latest episode of My Stuffed World. I can't find it on his site. He might have made it private, but he had this idea to, he basically make videos of like, he had to build a catapult and step by step, he would stop and be like, okay, I tried this. Now I'm going to try a tighter rubber band. And like, he kept iterating on his project and doing that kind of learning out loud and reflections. If I had 6 to 8 year olds, if you find the inadequate in your school district, Adam, that's such a personal question. I don't want to answer. I think if I already told you what I thought I would do, I would probably be homeschooling if my 6 to 8 year old was, but it's easy for me. I have a PhD in educational psychology and it's super hard for me. I can't teach my own kids. So like homeschooling is still super tough. It's you're in charge of everything. So I think other ways to do it is, and this depends on your comfortability with, the spread or the warmth. Like if you guys are in sunny California, I would have pods of friends that can meet outside, and because you can socially distance through almost most of the year. Like we're getting stuck here in New England. We're going to get chased back into the house very soon. So you can get Adam. You could also, if you don't, you can maybe meet with, reach out to other parents and see if 2 or 3 people want to, still be enrolled in your your remote school, but maybe you guys want to meet together, and maybe you guys, and it's, how strict you want to follow your own COVID rules. I mean, this is very rarely do I think Connecticut's Puritan history, but when we look at the fact that we are at the center of that we are next to the epicenter, and we're able to shut down our state and follow rules pretty quickly. I am glad that we have that level of people can just stare you down and make you feel bad if you don't follow the rules. It's a leftover pilgrim thing, I think. But you folks, you can maybe even work with families to you can rotate which parent's in charge instead of paying for a pod teacher like a lot of people do. Where this is how school's done. Like we did this through all of human history, all of it, except for the last 150 years. Communities and villages raised children, and we just passed them around because chances are they're probably working by 10. It's like adolescence is a very, very new concept. It's an important concept, very important as we learn about brain development and how late into the teens and early 20s brain development occurs. So there isn't a right answer, Adam. It's you have to know your child. Like my kids wanted to be back in, and I know if they wouldn't even let me, we went full remote, my kids wouldn't even let me pull them out. They'd probably still want to go because it's just that's what they want. So there isn't a right or wrong answer. It's a conversation that you can have with a 6 to 8-year-old too. You might find that you think the remote learning's not that good, but your child might still be happy. And like I said, don't worry about falling behind in grade levels. Grade levels are made up things. I wish we had intergenerational learning where grades, why? Who said that, a 6-year-old should be in one grade, a 7-year-old in one grade, 8-year-old, why can't you have 12 and 8-year-olds together? We used to do that all the time. Again, you can go to Nathan Hale's house right in my town, East Haddam, Connecticut, Nathan Hale's schoolhouse. It's one room. Everybody of every age, that's where they went. And it was okay. So yes, the world's gotten more technical and there's a lot more knowledge to know, but I don't think it's fundamental. Our brain has not shifted in the speed that the web has shifted. We still and nor do I, now I don't want to get too philosophical, but I also don't think that all learning and memory resides in the brain, but that's a whole other discussion. Other questions?
Some of the parents are concerning about their kids falling behind their peers. Not just about the grade level, but
and that's where. So how do we define falling behind your peers? Is it a test? Who decides that we're giving a test? Is that really what learning is? We're saying we made up these standards, the Common Core State standards. Then a testing company made up a test to measure those standards, and now we say your kid's falling behind grade level based on these rando test scores. You know what? Nobody's ever asked me is. On a job application, college applications, yeah, but not anymore. They're not asked for SATs that much anymore. Nobody really cares about your test scores. So falling behind your peers, so if you're falling behind your peers in reading Huckleberry Finn one more time, but at the same time you're learning to be a YouTube star and knowing what a jump cut is and editing videos as you learn math yourself at home, maybe you're getting ahead of your peers. I think we have to remember that there's a myth of measurement, and it's a tool. Who wrote that book? I think it's Tools of Mathematical Mass Destruction or something like that. It's some kind of another James Paul G's recent book on the anti-education era. I think is a good one for parents to read. It sounds dated because it's all about MySpace, but Dana Boyd's It's Complicated, just talking about the social media lives of children, I think is a good book. It's free for parents. There's open source versions online, and I think that's a great resource for teachers as well. I hope I answered that question. So yeah, so I think matching, I saw that anonymous one is you do want to match those peers, but it looks like we only have about 5 minutes left. So I want to hand it back over to everyone here. This was actually a lot of fun. So thanks everybody.
Yeah. So there were great questions, and thank you for your answers. Many of them I feel resonance with those questions. And it's really hard. We're in the COVID era. It's really hard to do remote learning. I mean, we have 2 kids as well. It's been challenging. And although our school district is pretty good about it, but I can see that many people have problems, what I hear from my friends. So I think overall, which I want to ask to maybe summarize and wrap up, what are the best way that as a summary, we can improve remote learning? And yeah, that would be
I think I would go back to and I'll share that chat, and I'm going to write it up into a post with like the answers because they were like placeholders. Really focusing on those learning logs and creating that system. Like Sunday night, setting up that goal, like looking at that weekly schedule, and creating that place for your student to reflect about how they're learning online, and making that space and those time management techniques. Where is that one space? And yeah, I'm talking time management with 6 to 8 year olds, but so that's a little quick. But you know what? A fun little 10-minute timer. If like do it like my kind of general rule is 10 minutes of attention per grade level and nothing more than an hour. So once you hit 6th grade, it just stops. Everybody, like even adults, no meeting should be over an hour. So 10 minutes of attention in 1st grade, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50, 60, all the way on. And if you just put that rule in, like, and you know what? If you take your kid and walk them away because they need that 10-minute screen break, what's the teacher going to say? Like, you're the parent. That's like, remember that too. Like, there's nothing the schools can, like, they can send you warning. Like, you are in charge of your child. So you make those decisions. In partnership, you should hopefully be working in partnership with your educational opportunities in your schools. These teachers mean well. Like, it's not like they're having just as much hard time. They're working in a system that didn't set them up for success too. So that's my number one tip is focus on one way that you're going to have your kids do a learning log and reflecting on their learning, and building in, I guess it's 3 tips, building that space to learn, and then creating those time management routines. And it's got to be routines. That's what school provides our students, is like, you kind of got to learn how to be bored and how to deal with it. Work's boring all the time. I still do it. So it's not wrong to be bored. It's a good skill to learn how to overcome.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for summarizing. So I just want to ask if anyone else has a question, and even our friends who have any questions from panels.
Yeah, I may have one last question. So, Greg, I sometimes find hard to do hands-on learning through remote teaching. So do you have any suggestions about hands-on learning?
Again, I think this is the number one tool that should be involved in hands-on remote learning is whiteboards. And then thinking about hands-on as digital manipulatives as well. So if I am doing a math lesson, there are so many great tools that can, like say, I don't want to just learn fractions. I need to see fractions as a decimal and as a percent as all being the same thing, the same representation of a part of a whole. And there's many great manipulatives online for doing those. And then just thinking about your counters. I have 5 pawns here. If I made 2 of them black, I could have 2/5. And you could play, and then I could do decimals. So you're not going to be able to know the supplies that a learner has in their house, but think about things like, if they're doing nested arrays. The other thing is like, play games, categories, or I love, because you got the TechDev Academy, there's a game called Tag Revolution. And I played that in Zoom. And that's like, instead of instead of giving like actual HTML tags, you know, everybody gets a number and you give them tags like that marker's dead, that marker's dying, maybe one of them's gonna work. Have your supplies ready at a time. You know, you could do clap to clap. And you know, you say clap to clap. All right, so 1 through 10, you're clap to clap. But also nested inside of the clap element is the spin element for numbers, line numbers. You make the kids line numbers because it's just like they're reading you know, their dev environment. And line numbers 7 and 8, you have a span of spin. And so you're hoping you see, you know, 1 through 10 is sitting there going like this, but then 7 and 8 are going like this. So there's lots of offline or just interactive games. Get them out of their seats. Get kids out of seats. And that's how you do hands-on learning. Hands-on learning means out of your seat by definition. Find them opportunities to work on something that they care about. You know, like if you're writing authentic audiences for writing tasks, you can, when it comes to writing, that's what, again, why I like giving them a blog. I guess I should go back to the original answer. What's the first thing I should do to support my children? Get on a blog. Literally, like, give them a website and have them and give them server space and let them start just being online. So I'm going to go back and erase my first 3 tips and put that as tip 0. But yeah, so that's there are fun ways. Think categories, Pictionary, word sorts. Like if I'm trying to learn 6 to 8-year-olds, what am I trying to learn? I need to learn the difference between diphthongs and digraphs. But I don't say words like diphthongs and digraphs. I'd say things like, what are your ooh words, your ah words, and your, you know, like, or somebody will say their name. Those are your talkers, and then you have your whiners, your walkers, your oohs, your ah. And not basically they don't realize it, but I'm defining digraphs and diphthongs for my little kids. Word sorts are such an amazing tool if you want to support your student for reading. And this is where like certain things like those 6 to 8-year-olds, this is where computers are better than at people. I don't think the machine learning isn't really there as it should be. Phonics should be so systematically easy. I can't believe anybody isn't like, there's so many, it's the most popular reading app in the iOS marketplace. It's one of the biggest. But you can just do phonics games at home. It's just word games and vocabulary, and then just reading. Like really, like I guess that should be tip 0.0 is, you know, those stupid reading logs, read 20 minutes a night, lame. What I would rather have is have your kids catch you reading 20 minutes a night. Or they need to see you read. If you want a reader, read. That's it. If you don't want a reader, scream at your kid to read every 20 minutes. And reading is the most important thing that they can do, especially after 3rd grade, because that's where you build your vocabulary. So I don't care what their passion is. Somebody's writing about it. Find your kid's passion. Find the books. Get them reading it. Get them writing it. That's 0.0. 0.01 is get them a website to talk about what they're reading and writing.
Yep.